Today is test day. Before you take your test, I want to go ahead and do a quick review. As you go through your test, though, please make sure you're reading carefully. So every word that's on this assessment is meant to be read. If you're just bypassing all of the information that's important, you're not looking at your sources, you're not looking at the information that's being given to you here, you're going straight to the question, and I can guarantee that you're not going to do your best. So slow down, take your time, and actually read what's in front of you so that you can do your best. Let's quickly go into our slides that we pretty much went through yesterday, but I want this to be fresh on your mind. So we have our big question. This big question has led us to our assessment today. The most important thing here that we need to remember is that amplitudes amplitudes control the volume of a sound. So it's either going to get louder or it's going to get softer. Wavelengths control the pitches of a sound. So it's either going to be a low pitch or a high pitch. I guarantee you are going to see these on your assessment. You are going to need to know the difference. So please put it in your head now. It should have been in your head as we went over this big question and these answers for about a week and a half. But please make sure they're in your mind, on your mind now. These are some key vocabulary. We've went over these definitions for about a week. Amplitude, wavelength, and waveform. The two most important definitions you're going to need to remember in words are amplitude and wavelength. You are going to see some questions on your assessment that's going to have you're going to need to know what the amplitude looks like, and you're going to need to know how to define the word amplitude as well as wavelength. So when you think amplitude, you're thinking the height from the peak to the straight line that's here. So amplitude is your height. This is your vertical line that's going up and down. When you think of wavelength, you are thinking about the distance between the two peaks. So when you see a line that's going across between the two peaks, you're thinking wavelength because that's the distance. It's going to be long or short. I want to again go over how to read some sound waves. So I'm simply going to just read sound wave number 1 so you can get an idea because again, we did review all 3 sound waves yesterday. So here I know that the amplitude for all 3 of these sound waves are the same because the height is the same. There's not one amplitude that is shorter than the other, so it is all the same loudness. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the sound wave, thinking about the different pitches and the different patterns I see in all 3. So sound wave number 1, because this is a long wavelength here, this is a short distance, and this is a long distance here. That means this is a low pitched sound, this is a high pitched sound, this is a low pitched sound. So if I needed to read that, this would be low pitched, high pitched, low pitched for sound wave number 1. You are going to need to be able to read the sound waves because when you get to your evidence, which is this sheet right here, you're going to need to know the difference and be able to provide the evidence that's going to prove your claim is correct. Before we get into this evidence, let's go ahead and go through some information that you're going to see on the assessment again. Amplitude, we see it again here. You're going to see an image very similar to this with a vertical line, a line going up and down, and you're going to need to remember that it's amplitude because amplitude deals with the height of a wave. When you see this image and you see the arrow going between 2 peaks, it's going across from left to right. You need to remember that it's the wavelength because this is showing you the distance between 2 peaks of a wave. When you see these 2 images here, you're going to have an image with an arrow pointing at the very top, the very pointed part of this wave, and you're going to have an image with an arrow showing or pointing at the very bottom of the wave. You need to know that at the top it is the peak, that is the pointed part of the wave, and at the bottom right here is simply the bottom or the trough, which is pretty much the opposite of your peak. You're going to see those images again, and you're going to need to know that that's a peak, that is the bottom, aka trough. This is amplitude, and that is wavelength. You will see it again in your assessment today. Now let's go ahead and think about this. This is source number 1 that's going to be seen in your assessment. You are going to need to know how to read this information. Call 1. You also, again, like I said in your review yesterday, you need to read all of the information that's given to you. Do not skip over the information that's being given to you. If there's language here in call 1, call 2, call 3, you need to read that because it is very important. It's actually telling you key information for your for the written portion of your assessment. So when I look at call 1 and call 2, I need to know the difference. I see the difference in amplitude. The amplitude here is shorter than the amplitude here. If the amplitude is shorter, that means that this call 1 was more quiet than call 2. Call 2 was loud enough for the dolphin calf to hear his mother's call. The pitch in both call 1 and call 2 is the same. The pattern is the same. That is how I know that the pitch is the same. Again, the only difference between call 1 and call 2 is the amplitude. My evidence there is simply because this is shorter, this is longer. If it's shorter, it's more quiet. If it is longer, that meaning the amplitude. If it is longer, that means it is louder, so the dolphin can hear. When I think about the difference between call 2 and call 3, and you're going to need to think about the difference in your assessment. When I think about the difference, I'm noticing right off the top that this is a different pattern. This pattern here is different from this pattern. So I know that if my mother's call starts with a high-pitched sound, I know when I hear a dolphin call that starts with a low-pitched sound, I know for a fact that's not my mom because it does not start with a high-pitched sound. So what is my evidence and how can I prove that the dolphin calf was able to hear his mother call, which is call 2, and respond to call 2 and not respond to call 3? I simply know that because these two patterns are different. I also know, based on my simulation and our lessons, that if the pattern is different, I can read the difference, and I know that the difference here is call 3 starts with a low pitched sound. Call 2 starts, which is his mother, starts with a high pitched sound. Here's a quick review of my claim and my two pieces of evidence. These are the same two questions that you're going to see in a moment. You need to be able to write that claim. You need to also be able to include two pieces of evidence proving your claim is correct. Please notice that in my claim here, answering the question, why did the dolphin calf hear the second call from his mother but not the first? My claim was the calf heard the second call from his mother because it was louder than the first call. My evidence is not going to be related to anything other than how I know that that second call was louder. I'm not proving the pitch. I'm not proving anything that has to do with the wavelength or anything that has to do with the pitch of the sound because that is for question 2. The only evidence that I need to provide is proving that the second call was louder than the first by looking at the evidence here and by also having paid attention to the lessons throughout the week. I do wish you guys the best of luck. I'm pretty sure you guys are going to do well. Everyone who looked at every video, everyone who put 100% effort into their class assignments leading up to this moment, I'm certain that you're going to do well. We're looking for 80% or higher. So good luck.